Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Gibbons, and we are ready to start another episode of Bridges Conversations. Um, if you're watching us on Facebook, and this conversation will be available to view later, both on Facebook and at the Bridges Foundation website. And there's that information on the bottom of the screen. Um, Bridges, for those of you who may be for some reason tuning in for the first time, Bridges is an organization in St. Louis that offers the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola in everyday life. And it's a 9-month week, basically a weekly retreat with a daily component of prayer. We begin every September and go through about May. So if you're interested in learning more about us, please follow the link there. Today we are talking with Ann Rotermund of the Ignatian Spirituality Project, which is a national movement with a St. Louis component. Um, the Ignatian Spirituality Project was founded in 1998 in Chicago by a Jesuit named Father Bill Creed and a man named Ed Scherna, who was with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. And ISP offers retreat experiences of hope and healing and belonging to men and women who are recovering from homelessness and addiction. And so during these weekend retreats, they invite the participants into a deeper encounter with God as they understand God, and they provide encouragement and empowerment to make real and transformative life changes. So we thought we would have a conversation with Ann today, who's a mental health consultant to the project. And perhaps more than anything, this is an invitation for those in the Bridges community to maybe think about getting involved. And we'll talk about this as we go, because they're always looking for people to help run these retreats. So that's a big, long invitation. But Ann, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks. Well, let's begin as we always do. Can you tell me a little bit about you, your background, where you grew up, your early life and career, and how you became involved in Ignatian spirituality?
Yes. Well, I'm a St. Louisan. I grew up here in South St. Louis, and actually went to Catholic school for 12 years, and then I was a sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet for 22 years, and left the community in I think it was like 1988 or something like that. But when I came out of the convent, I answered an ad in the paper to work at St. Patrick's Center, and I've been there ever since.
Hmm.
So, and that's how I got connected with the Ignatian Spirituality Project, because in 2008, the fellows came from Chicago to extend the Ignatian Spirituality Project to other cities. And since we had a big homeless population here and a Jesuit presence here, why they showed up at St. Patrick's Center to ask if we weren't interested in doing this. And I had been teaching meditation for years, and I felt like this was the next step. So
Hmm.
it just was kind of fell into my lap, actually. I didn't even know they existed.
Oh.
So that's how we got started with it.
And I assume back when you were in the CSJs that was that during your time in the religious community that you first became aware of and involved in the spiritual exercises. And
Yes, I
yeah.
did. I actually made the 30-day retreat um, once
Mm.
in the community, and that was a powerful experience for sure.
Yeah.
So this again, I had some knowledge of the uh, 30
Right.
days and the spiritual exercises.
Well, let's shift to talking about the we're going to call it the ISP, Ignatian Spirituality Project for short here.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about this weekend program. What is it? Who's it for? what goes on. I know you can do a good job of kind of walking us through one of these weekends.
Well, we have overnights 4 times a year, two for women and two for men, and then we have a follow-up day about 6 weeks later for the same group of people who did the overnight. And we asked for volunteers. Our team is made up of volunteers who facilitate the retreat. And it's not a preached retreat. So facilitators and retreatants all answer the same questions, go deeply into their spiritual life together. So we start off the weekend by introducing ourselves to one another. And that's done in twosomes and then brought back to the large group. And in the large group, you're asked to introduce your partner, not you, your partner.
Mm.
So it sets up the whole idea of listening to somebody else and to be vulnerable enough to share something of yourself
Mm.
and about who you are. And that's just the first movement of the retreat. The second movement goes into what we call fear versus trust. And because it's focusing on the first 3 steps of AA in the first week of Ignatius's exercises, that kind of that's the movement here. And we talk about first off, we talk about healthy fears and those that aren't healthy, and then we ask people to share a fear they've overcome and one they're still coping with. So right away, you're asked to be vulnerable. You're asked to share a fear and a deep one. Um, and facilitators are asked to do that too. So we challenge each other to really offer something profoundly profound in ourselves that we're struggling with. So again, right away on early Saturday morning, you're right into the depths of this retreat. It's not, it goes deep pretty quickly.
Can I
And
ask?
then,
So these are people who are currently unhoused or who are
right,
recovering from an addiction of some sort.
right.
Where do they come from, and how do they get involved in this program?
Well, at St. Patrick's Center, we because we have meditation 3 times a week, I kind of look around to see who's drawn to that
Hmm.
and who can sit still for a few minutes and take it in, and who's been sober some a few months because by the time they're sober 2 or 3 months, their spiritual life is beginning to waken up again, and that's a good time to catch them. So that's how we find them at St. Patrick's Center.
Hmm. Hmm.
The other agencies we work with, we actually had team members that worked within that agency, and they knew what we were looking for. So yeah, it's important to get people at the right time and
Yeah.
who are interested in their spiritual growth.
All right. Thank you
Yes.
for that. I just wanted to clarify that for folks. I know
Yeah.
there's a few people watching right now, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them just in the comment section on your Facebook page, and I will see them, and we can relay them on to Ann. So as we go forward, if you have any questions, feel free to do that. So you were talking before I interrupted you about healthy and unhealthy fear, and dealing with that as part of the process. So I don't know if you want to pick up there, or what's the next step then?
Well, and the next movement is where we have what we call a witness. And this is somebody who has made the retreat before and and has really changed because of it and can speak to that. And that's not unusual in an AA meeting to have a witness. So it kind of fits with that whole concept. And that can be very powerful. And they talk about what their life was like before the retreat,
Hmm.
during the retreat, and then after. What has life been like after making this overnight retreat? And that is processed with the whole team also. And then the next movement has to do with what we call who is God to me? And these are open ended questions that we ask them to just focus on two or three of them and go deep, and then we break into small groups and discuss it. And there are questions like, can you talk about an early childhood memory of God? What is God asking of you now? What is God teaching you about God now? So, I mean, these are profound and deep questions.
Mm.
When we first did them, I could hardly answer them myself. I had a hard time, you know. And we give people time to really, and we write it down, not just talk about it. We write it down first and then discuss it. Again, I had an experience with one retreatant who was assigned to me, and I think she was the only one I had at the moment. And when she pulled out her sheet, she had nothing on it. And I thought, oh, okay. And she said to me, I've never had an experience of God.
Mm.
So I, I kind of prayed to the Holy Spirit pretty quickly. And it was springtime at Crondelet. And I took her out into the courtyard where everything was blooming.
Mm.
And I had her, you know, touch things, smell things, look at things. And she did it. And I thought she's going to kind of push against this, but she did it. And when she came back to me, she said, why am I doing this? I said, well, nature is part of God, and you touching it and smelling it and feeling it, you were getting, having an experience of God. And she said to me, you mean I've had an experience of God by doing that? I said, yes, 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 yes. So that was a powerful experience. And now she has that to go on too. She knows that it's not just nature, but God too.
Mm. Mm.
So, and you never know what you're going to come up with people that are, you know, struggling but open.
No.
Yeah. And then later, the last movement of the day is what we call healing of memories, and that's a powerful ritual in which people are asked to, they don't speak it out loud, but asked to um, put a rock in the water that they've been carrying all day, to let go of something that they maybe have been carrying for a very long time.
Mm.
Um, and then we have dinner, and in the evening, the men watch a movie and the women do an art project. And we use the examen at the end of the evening and teach them that.
You
And then the
mentioned earlier, sorry to interrupt you,
go
but
ahead.
you mentioned earlier meditation,
Yes.
and what's the role of quiet and time for meditation, time for reflection in all this? And is that very often a new concept for some of these folks? Just as that woman, you know, hadn't realized she had been having an experience of God. So
Right.
how hard is it for them? And not everyone's the same, obviously, but what's the role of quiet and reflection and meditation in the retreat?
Almost all of these movements have time in the beginning to, like the whole thing on fear and trust, to put down a fear that you've overcome or one that you're still experiencing. We spend a few minutes of quiet time. There's maybe 5-10 minutes of quiet time, so they can actually bring a real fear up, or something they need to speak about. And this whole thing with who is God to me, that's done in silence too, the writing down of who is God to me. So each movement has some silence in the beginning to really go deep. And some of the experience itself, the rituals are silent.
Mm.
Um, so, and the men and women at St. Pat's, because we teach meditation 3 times a week, they're kind of used to sitting quietly. So, and the others just kind of fall in. People just
Mm.
are hungry for this. Actually, they're really hungry for it because there's so much noise in their world. They're
Mm.
just so much noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned, so is that's pretty much the gist of the program? It sounds like. Is there a the end of the retreat itself, and then talk a little bit about the follow up program?
Yes, the second day of the retreat, we have breakfast together, and then we have a guided meditation that a facilitator leads, and then we process that what that was like, and then we spend the rest of the morning kind of processing what has happened here and what are we letting go of, what can we leave here at Crondelet, and what are we taking from this, um, and how has it changed us.
Mm.
And people can actually, they don't want to go home. They want to stay and have some more of this good experience. So it's a real simple process on that second morning, but can be very powerful in what we're letting go of, we don't need anymore. And you always get something like, I can finally forgive my mother, or I can
Hmm.
forgive the person who killed my son, or I mean, this is big stuff. It's not little stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so, and the follow up day is about a month to 6 weeks afterwards, and we focus really on what is life like for you now. How is it different? We break into small groups, and they kind of talk about that with each other. And then in the afternoon, we bring in what we call listeners, people who are new to them, who will spend 50 minutes, it's almost an hour, listening to each retreatant. And the job of the listener is to listen.
Mm.
Um, it's powerful. And then we bring them back after the listening session, and the listeners, the retreatants, the facilitators, all together. And we ask two questions. We ask the facilitators, what was it like to hear somebody's story? And we ask the retreatants, what was it like to have someone listen unconditionally, love them, and
Hmm.
um, respect them? And that's powerful. It's just
Yeah.
powerful. And I think the wisdom of doing that of the follow up is that if you did it earlier, there wouldn't be this trust.
Hmm.
So they're finding that they can trust people other than us in the retreat, in the overnight retreat. So it's really a powerful experience, and we need listeners.
Yeah.
And it's only 2 hours on a Saturday, so
We'll come back and talk about that, the
yes,
volunteer aspect of this in just a minute. We have
yep.
one question that came up from Ann Hager, who's a member of our community. She asked, how do you introduce Ignatian spirituality during the movements of the retreat? How would you answer that?
Well, it's kind of, it's actually woven into the whole thing, and it's not. It doesn't say week one, week two. The concepts are there, the concepts of you know realizing that we're weak and sinful in some way and need God. It's all there in those movements of
Hmm.
fear and trust and healing of a memory. Can I let go of these attachments that I don't need anymore? So just like the first three steps of AA, all talk about letting go and
Hmm.
realizing we're out of control and we need some help.
Yeah.
So they're not specifically labeled,
Right.
but all the concepts are there.
Right. Thank you for that. Thanks for the question, Ann. So let's move on to maybe someone's listening to this and they are a little inspired by what you're saying and they think they might want to get involved. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and
Sure.
what qualifications they need to bring and what kind of commitment there is? So just give us a little bit on that.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, really, all they need is a desire to bring who they are and their own spiritual life to somebody that needs that support right now. And that doesn't mean that our unhoused population do not have a spirituality, because they do. In many ways, they put us to shame. But uh, I think wanting to connect with people on the margins is going to be an important piece too, to realize what life is like for other folks that don't have what we have, that
Mhm.
don't have a home to go to, or people who will support them. So I think that desire is really important. And then we're not asking for every month, or a few times a year maybe, or maybe I have some team members that, because of life experiences and life coming in the way, they've helped on retreats a year ago. So, and we need drivers, we need listeners, we need people who will facilitate the retreats. We need people who will fundraise. So anything you want to offer, we could probably use you.
And if you
And
want,
people in recovery too. People in recovery who want to help in that way.
hmm, thank you. So I put this information up on the screen. If you just want to have a further conversation with Ann about these volunteers communities, please reach out to her at either 314-802-2176 or A Rotermund, Rotermund, at stpatrickcenter.org. I'll
Right.
leave that up, and it'll be a part of the video also, of course. Um, what have I missed, Ann? What is there anything else you want to say about ISP for anyone who might be listening?
Well, it's so interesting that we think the little team we have, we think that we're offering, that we're bringing so much to others, but in many ways we get so much back.
Mm,
And we do bring hope and healing to others. But these little teams of men and women who do the retreats, who facilitate them, they become a little community on their own too. And it's wonderful to see the growth in people who volunteer to do this. Um, and it's just fascinating what kind of growth you're going to get,
mm,
even when you think you're the one giving everything, giving it away. Uh, it just comes back to you, and
right.
and when I go to the center too, afterwards, the clients just love the fact that somebody has offered them a chance to deepen their own spiritual life.
Yeah. And just to reiterate something that you said earlier, um, it's not the expertise that you're looking for. It's
No.
people who have a heart for
Right.
this, who are willing to uh, stay out of the way and listen much of the time. Although, but
Mhm.
share their own story too, as appropriate. Those are the qualifications you're looking for, correct?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And I can give you one example of a gentleman who came, who was just a sweetheart. He came to be interviewed about joining the team, and he was used to going on preached retreats, Jesuit preached retreats. So he wasn't used to sharing himself.
Mm,
And I said to him, I said, well, you'd have to do that. You'd have to share and be vulnerable and share yourself. And he said, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I said, well, I challenged you to do that because I knew he was a deep and good man. You could tell that. And he said, well, I'm going to try that. And he became one of our really good team members because
mm,
he challenged himself to offer his own vulnerability and his own challenges with our clients and with our retreatants.
mm,
He is now deceased,
mm.
but it was to see him grow in this way, because he was just used to taking it in and being inside himself and not offering it. And
Yeah.
so that's an important piece. You have to be willing and open, and we've had team members who struggled with that, but just have become more and more open about sharing their life and their struggles.
It's a
Yes.
great example of this idea that we throw around the idea, or the moniker, a lot of this idea of being a contemplative in action, right?
Yeah.
You have to, to take what you find in contemplation and share that with others and bring it out to the world.
Exactly. Because they're hungry for it. People are hungry for realness and genuineness and depth, and spirituality. They're not hungry for people to tell them who God is for them, but they are
Yeah.
hungry to find God themselves.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end here. If there's we got a few people online still. If you have any questions, now's the time to type it into the Facebook comment section. If not, we'll wrap things up. I'll give you a minute. Let me say a couple things. First of all, our next conversation will be a month from today on Friday, February 3rd at noon with Carol Ackles of the Ignatian Spirituality Center in Dallas. Carol is a retreat master, a spiritual director, a writer. She works very closely with Father Joe Tetlow at the Ignatian Spirituality Center in Dallas. She presented one of the what we call the Ignatian community retreats for Bridges a number of years ago. And she and I have become friends over the last few years. And I'm not even sure what we're going to talk about yet. We're going to figure that out soon, but I know it'll be fun and lively and entertaining. So please mark your calendars for Friday, February 3rd. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to look at the clock and see that we're coming up on about a half hour anyway. And thank you very much for your time. Let me
Thank
put
you.
your contact slide up here one more time as we're completing this. Again, if you have any questions or just want to have a conversation with Ann about what this might look like, please
Yeah,
reach out to her at one of those contact points. So
that would be wonderful.
thank you. Well, thank you, Ann. If you'll just hold on to the line a minute, you and I can finish offline here a minute. I will end this broadcast and we'll see you all again in February. Thanks very much.
Thank you.